I'm at the finishing stages of this hat now, and I've got 4 yarn tails here, and I want to use them to the best effect to neaten up the slight joggle where I've got that contrasting round, creating a pearl bump. So I'm going to begin by smoothing out the stocking stitch row beneath it. And so that's the last of the stocking stitches. And I'm going to do a 1 stitch duplicate stitch of the first stitch of that round. So I'm actually dragging it downwards to equal the forces. So I'm trying to smooth off the juggly bit. So I've done 1 duplicate stitch, and now I'm just taking my tail between the layers. So I've made that as smooth as I can, and then I'm going to do the same with the one above it. So there's my first stitch of grey above the orange line. And I'm going to go into that one on the row above, or the round above. Copy that stitch. One duplicate stitch should be plenty there, and then I'm going to take the tail as far as I can between the layers. I'm feeling down inside the hat to make sure the needle's not sticking out on the inside layer. Now I'm going to take the orange yarn and do something similar with both ends of that. So I'm snuggling that stitch up a little bit, duplicating the one next door, and actually I'm not going to duplicate more than 1 stitch, and take the tail between the layers. Now that just remains for this one. I'm snuggling the stitch, and taking it into the first orange stitch next door. There we go. Back in where it came from. I might just do this stitch here as well. It looks a little baggy. So I've actually done 2 duplicates there. And there we go. So that's considerably neatened out the joggle at the start of that round. Now all that remains to be done is to repeat the exercise on the other side of the hat. And here we have another joggle. This is green ribbing going into the double knitting above it, and we've got a distinct beginning of round. So I'm going to begin by trying to level up the blue round. So to assist with that, I'm going to tighten up that last or first blue stitch there. Go into the one I'm trying to make it look as if it's next door to, and copy that one. And back in between the layers and take the tail as far as I comfortably can. So even just that one action has smoothed things out a lot. Now I'm going to take the green tail and try and connect this high green stitch with this low green stitch. So I'm going to make that high green stitch a bit smaller. Then duplicate the low green stitch. I'm going to pull a little of the underneath green stitch yarn out and just tuck it behind. And make sure that my duplicate stitch sits on top of the underneath one. I'm pushing the underneath one back. So that looks okay. And now I'm going to just take that tail as far as I can. I'm not going into the green area because that's rib. So I'm taking it just on the edge of the green and up into the blue where I've got 2 layers. And you notice that I pinch before I take the needle off so I don't distort those stitches anymore. And now you can see, well, now hopefully you can see there's hardly any joggle there. Beginning and end point of the cast on is always a little bit of a challenge, and I'm going to begin by trying to get the purple sort of evened up, see if I can pull this purple down a bit. I'm going to go in to the next set of greys, and that will make me a sort of pearl bump that appears on that edge. So hopefully that will form part of that sequence. And now I'm going to snuggle it a bit, duplicate down here, and then sneak off between the layers. Hold that one before I pull the needle off. Now I've got the grey one to do. That doesn't look too bad. Now the grey one shows more because it's brighter, and if I take it here it'll make 3 layers of grey. So I think what I'm going to try and do is sneak down here, come to the grey side, and just tweak it down. And now I've come up a couple of rows and I'm going to just duplicate that stitch here before taking the tail off a distance between the layers. Pinch that stitch, pull off the needle, and there is my beginning and end point. Really don't think that's too bad. No one's going to stop you in the street and say, that's where you joined your cast on edge. Now all that remains is to neaten these yarn tails. So I like to make sure there's as much yarn inside the hat as possible, or the project. Snip the tail and then pull that inside. Again, stretch it, cut it, pop it inside, and that way we've got nice long tails inside the hat between the layers.